Hello and welcome to In the Classroom, an educational podcast making teaching and learning more transparent. My name is Benjamin Stewart at benjaminlstewart.org. Today I want to continue our discussion looking at the template for writing a thesis statement. In a prior episode, we talked about the first few pages of your document as well as the literature review. Today we want to talk about the methods section and the results and discussion section. We'll conclude also giving a few notes regarding the references. So the methods section is a little bit different than your literature review in that the methods section is where you're going to be talking more specifically about your own study. So you're going to be talking about the participants, the instruments that you use to collect the data, the procedure that you followed to collect that information, the way that you analyzed your data. All of this information will be included in the methods section. Specifically, if we look at the document, you'll notice that the first section, the participants, you'll be asked to include one paragraph to talk about the demographics of your study. Now, you'll notice that here we are asking for one paragraph per section. We have a level 2 heading called participants, and I would use these exact headings and subheadings. We have a method as a level 1. We have participants as a level 2 heading. So I would follow the template and use these same headings to develop each of these sections. Notice that here we're asking for one paragraph, whereas before in the prior episode we suggested not to include only one paragraph in any particular section. Any particular one section. In this case, it's okay to include one paragraph per heading or per section. So, participants, this is where you're going to include your demographic information. For example, think about who they are, where they're from, how old are they, what level of English or academic level do they have, how did you select them, did you have or did you get permission from them to take part in the study? If your participants are children, did you get permission from their parents for them to participate in your study? Did they complete an informed consent form? All of these questions are things to think about and consider, not to say that you have to include or answer all of this information. In fact, you only want to include information in the participants that relate to your objectives, that is, your research questions and or your hypothesis. So try to consider these questions when thinking about how you want to develop this one paragraph for related to your participants. The second section of your method, instruments. In this section, you'll want to include a description of the instruments. Think about questionnaires, surveys, observational guides, checklists. These are all some examples of instruments that you could discuss in this section. You want to also reference each instrument by stating in parentheses, see Appendix A or see Appendix B. The third section, procedure and data analysis. In this section, you'll include the process that you follow to collect and analyze the data. So reference your appendices as necessary for this section as well. So if you used a particular procedure, you can also include it in your appendix section at the end. Again, in parentheses, we'll want to say see Appendix C, see Appendix D, and so on. It's important to think about the method section as what information would be necessary if someone wanted to replicate your study. What would they need to know? And so this is a good guiding question that you can think about whenever you're deciding, well, what should I include in the methods section? Now, after you've completed the methods section, which typically should be about 500 words total, and again, in each of these three sections, we want to develop one paragraph per section. We're going to now present our findings, and for most studies, most of you will be doing qualitative study, and so most of you are going to decide to create one section called Results and Discussion. This will be your level 1 heading. And then within this section, you will then decide how many level 2 headings, much in the same way that you decided on how many subheadings or level 2 headings you had in your literature review. Anywhere from 2 to 4 subsections or anywhere from 2 to 4 level 2 headings will be sufficient for a paper of this length. In the template, by default, I've included 3 level 2 headings, but anywhere from 2 to 4 is perfectly acceptable. Think about how you want to organize your ideas, just like we did in the literature review. We want to follow some sort of pattern or organizational structure that makes sense. Think about what would be the easiest way for someone to understand your results and your discussion. Some may choose to organize the findings or organize this section, Results and Discussion, based on your research questions. So maybe the first research question is going to be answered in the first section, and the second research question under the second level 2 heading, and maybe the third research question under the third level 2 heading, as an example. But that's not the only way. It really depends on, again, how you want to organize your information. Within each of your level 2 headings, within each of your subsections, you're also going to want to create body paragraphs, each one having a topic sentence, and think about how you want to organize your topic sentences, the organizational pattern that you want to follow, which paragraph should come before another, how do you want to organize the sequence of your paragraphs in order to understand what you're presenting. And then even within each body paragraph, think about how you want to present your findings. Now, the body paragraph is going to be slightly different in the results and discussion section when compared to the body paragraph that you were thinking about and used for your literature review. In your results and discussion section, after your topic sentence, the evidence sentence now is going to be your evidence that you found. So you're going to be stating the evidence in the body paragraph in the results and discussion section. That's different than the evidence that you presented in your literature review, because that evidence came from an outside source where you had a citation. But in the results and discussion, your evidence sentence now are going to be your findings. Okay, so if you're merging your results and discussion into one section, one way to do that is to create one body paragraph and have a balance between evidence, that is your findings, your results, and then the analysis sentence is going to be partly your interpretation, right, of the results, and also your comparison sentences that link your findings, your interpretation back to the literature. That is, you're going to, in the analysis sentence, include some citations from your literature review where you're comparing and contrasting your interpretation of your results. So a couple of things here. Make sure that you're not including any citations or studies that you didn't include or mention in your literature review. All right? And also make sure that you have a good balance between these between evidence and analysis. But in this case, the citations are going to occur primarily in the analysis sentences in this section, whereas again, the evidence sentences are going to be your findings. Now, a second way that you could present your results and discussion section, if you're combining these two into one section, is to maybe begin with one paragraph where you're presenting your evidence. You're still going to begin with a topic sentence. You're still going to end the paragraph with either a linking sentence or a summarizing sentence. But let's say maybe you include only just evidence in the first paragraph or in one single paragraph. Then the following paragraph, beginning with a topic sentence, you then analyze what you mentioned in the prior paragraph that contains only evidence. So here, the second option is separating the evidence in one paragraph and the analysis sentences in a subsequent paragraph. Now, make sure that if you're choosing this pattern, that the analysis sentences that are part of a paragraph immediately follow the paragraph that contains the evidence. And so then make sure you're still maintaining balance between evidence and analysis sentences. But again, the difference here is that we're dividing up into paragraphs, one for evidence, one for analysis sentences. Let the topic sentence dictate if you should separate the two into separate paragraphs, one for evidence, another for analysis sentences, or if that for that one topic sentence, maybe it makes more sense to talk a little bit, present some evidence, and then analyze it, and then present a little bit more evidence, and then analyze that into one paragraph. You can choose these two different patterns throughout the results and discussion. You don't necessarily need to choose one and follow that throughout the whole results and discussion section. No, you could separate it. You could mix the two. So, for example, you might have the first paragraph where you are combining the evidence and analyze sentences into one paragraph, and then the second paragraph you're dedicating only to the evidence. The third paragraph, then you present an analysis, maybe 3 to 5 analysis sentences in the third paragraph that talk specifically about the evidence that came from the prior paragraph. All right, and so on. All right, so this is something that we'll be working with, or we'll be discussing, and I'll be giving you some suggestions about how to choose those patterns if you have questions about how to do that. But it's important to think about that when you're deciding how you want to separate and divide up those and structure your paragraphs for the results and discussion section. The final paragraph of your paper is going to include a conclusion paragraph. Now, it's not necessary to include a heading for the conclusion, but your final paragraph, your conclusion paragraph, is going to begin with your thesis statement. So you need to restate and reword your thesis statement. State in 3 to 5 sentences the significance or the relevance or the big picture of your main thesis. Finally, you want to close the paragraph with a closing statement or perhaps a final quote or a famous quote that finalizes the main idea of your paper. Your conclusion paragraph should be approximately 250 words. Again, one paragraph is sufficient. And when you're stating your significance, make sure that you revisit the problem statement and expand on what you stated there. The significance that you thought about and developed in your problem statement is where you're going to elaborate a little bit more in the conclusion as you finish your paper. Finally, the conclusion paragraph should not include any citations. All right, your references, if you go down to the bottom, you'll notice that there's a page for references and then several pages for your appendix. Now, the references, some key points that you might want to consider. Number one, references should be single space within each reference and double space between each reference. Number two, reverse indentation to what you have in the body of your thesis. That is, the first line should not have an indentation, and all subsequent lines of each reference should have a 0.5-inch indentation. Number three, follow APA 7th edition for all citations and references. Number four, each reference should have at least one citation, and each citation should have a reference. Number five, try to avoid websites altogether. No websites as references. Number six, no more than 2 books should be included in your references. Number seven, peer-reviewed journal articles are always your best resources. So try to use sources that are coming from peer-reviewed journal articles. Finally, number 8, a minimum of 10 references will be required for your thesis paper. Now, if you go into your appendices, if you look at the first one, Appendix A, you don't need to change that title or heading. Again, make sure that you're keeping the styles as was included in the template. And notice you also have a title for your appendix. Each appendix should have a title. And because the styles are set up as level 1, level 2 heading, these will automatically appear in your table of contents. If for some reason they do not appear in your table of contents, simply go back and make sure that you're using a level 1 and a level 2 style for each of these headings, and then they should automatically appear in your table of contents. All right, I hope this helps. In trying to use this template, try to, again, not change any of the headings that have been included here, so that basically all you need to do is go in and insert text within each of the sections, and this will help with formatting. In a separate video, I'll discuss and show how you can go about formatting your document in case something gets changed. Sometimes it does happen if you're copying and pasting text from one document to another, or you might just inadvertently delete a heading. I will go in and show you how to format all of the headings, all of the spacing for the document in the event that something gets changed from this template. But again, the purpose of this template is not only to guide you through the different sections as to what to include, but also the structure and format of this template is such that you shouldn't need to change much of anything. So I think we'll stop there for today. This has been In the Classroom, an educational podcast making teaching and learning more transparent. Thanks for listening.